I've been given the privilege to end our series, Elephants in the Room. It's been a fantastic series, and we've talked a lot about things that nobody really likes to talk about. All of you amazing preachers have told me things that I like and things that I don't like. But at the end of the day, what are we supposed to do with all this information? Some of you might be thinking, okay, I've heard you tell me what to do, but why should I do it? Why should I do anything? Why do I even exist? And so my question here today, I'm going to address that question, why we exist. People don't usually have a good answer for this question, so they think about it for a second, and then they forget it, and they drop it out of their minds, because we don't like the idea that our lives are meaningless, so we don't even think about it. Thousands of people have tried to answer this question. Every philosopher ever has thought about, why do I exist? Aristotle thought that everything had a purpose and a plan. Aristotle thought plants, their purpose was to grow and make more plants. And he thought people were to do the same, but they were also to become philosophers. He thought that was the ultimate goal of human achievement, is to become a philosopher. But at the end of the day, when you die, all the things you thought about on earth, they become meaningless as well. They get buried with you in the dirt. Things are valued based on how long they last. Generally, a diamond is forever. That's why it's so valuable. People are valued based on how much they impact, how long their impact will last. The president is probably the most important man alive right now. If anybody has a purpose, if anybody has a reason for living, it's probably the president. But his reign is so short that soon he'll be forgotten. Give it 100 years, and President Herbert Hoover becomes Herbert who? I would say that the only thing that can truly ever matter is something that's eternal, that never ends, something that doesn't cease. Christians and scientists and secular scientists, they all agree that the world is coming to an end at some point. It's all going to burn away and there's going to be nothing left. The galaxies are going to turn into dust. But don't let that get you down. My job as a pastor is to tell you there is meaning. Even though the world will turn to dust at one point and everything you've ever seen is going to be gone, there is meaning. And my job as an aspiring pastor is to point to the Bible and say, oh, there is meaning in this book. So I'm going to crack it open to our favorite wisdom literature author here today, and we're going to see what did you say his name was?
Homiletics.
Okay, whatever it was. Solomon, I think he wrote it. I don't know. Let's see what Solomon has to say in Ecclesiastes. He says, these are the writings of the word of the teacher. It says, everything is meaningless. Completely meaningless. What do people get for all of their hard work under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth never changes. Everything is wearisome beyond description. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we're never content. That's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted to hear from the Bible. I didn't want to hear that my life is meaningless, that everything is meaningless. The idea that he's evoking is this kind of idea of smoke. He says everything is smoke. It's like you look at it and you see it and it's there and you reach out and you try to touch it and it slips through your fingers and there's nothing there and it's meaningless. In the end, it's like looking at a cloud and saying, oh, look, that cloud looks like a puppy. It doesn't mean anything because the next moment it's gone. It's changed into something else entirely. But we're going to look at a different teacher. I'm not sure I like that Old Testament teacher very much, so we're going to look at a New Testament teacher, our teacher, Jesus, and we're going to see if he has any meaning for us in life. Jesus says in Matthew 6, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's a nice verse. It's kind of quaint. We say it a lot, and I don't think we really understand it. I kind of want to take a pause here and say that I think that when we hear the words, the Word became flesh, we have a tendency to kind of lower God to this kind of earthly, meaningless dirt level. God himself lowers himself to become like us, made from the dust. But we don't get that privilege to say that he's our little buddy. Oh, God does his thing and I do my thing. We get along sometimes and he goes off. I think this is a very low view of God that we've adapted into our lives. The writer of Colossians gives us a little higher view of God and a little higher view of Jesus. He says, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things on heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. He's saying things that matter and things that don't matter. Things that have a reason for existing, things that don't have a reason. They all are made by him. Things that are eternal and things that will fade away. They're made by him. Whether they're thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and Christ, in Christ, all things are held together. This kind of high view of God, he's the one holding this smoke ball together. He's the one who gives it all meaning. He's the one who stands from age to age. He's the everlasting. He is God. So you think when he tells us to do something that we would listen. When he says, do not, you think we would understand that he knows best because it's created through him and for him. You want to know why you exist? You exist for him. Sometimes we don't know what that looks like on here on earth or in heaven. We don't know what that looks like to be for him. But when he tells us to do something, we should probably do it. So when he says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, why does he tell us that? He's not telling us that because he's telling us, get a better bank that'll hold on to your money better, that doesn't let thieves in. He's not telling us this. He's telling us, don't hold on to the things of the earth because they are meaningless. These things of earth are like smoke. They'll rust away and they'll become nothing. If they aren't burned away in our lifetimes, when Jesus comes back, he's going to burn everything away and it'll all be meaningless smoke. But instead, store up treasures in heaven. So you know what? A lot of things are meaningless. That it doesn't matter. We all can agree that the color of your underwear, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have any bearing. It doesn't mean anything, right? It's a meaningless act. But there are other things that are even more grand that we think have meaning. If people call you names, it doesn't mean anything. In the end of time, it doesn't matter if people think you're dumb or stupid. They say, oh, he's a loser. Oh, he smells bad. Like, these things are worthless and meaningless. But it also means that if people call you good things, like doctor or reverend or captain or even dean, like, these titles will burn away. Yes, they'll burn away, and the only title we'll have left is brother. You know, all these things will burn away, and we focus on chasing after these things of life. It doesn't matter what people call you. It just matters what you call the least of these. It doesn't matter the clothes you wear. It doesn't matter if you wear nice clothes or not so nice clothes. It really doesn't matter. It's not a sin either way. It's not a sin to wear Gucci. I don't get it, but it's not a sin. But it doesn't matter what you wear. It matters who you clothe. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. It doesn't matter what car you drive, if you drive a Kia or a Corvette. It only matters where you drive. Are you driving for him? Because you were made for him. It doesn't matter what you eat. if you eat pigs or if you eat plants. It just matters who you feed. It doesn't matter if your house is big or if your house is little. These things are inconsequential. It matters who you give shelter to. It doesn't matter if you get married or if you're single. It just matters if you have right relationships with people. So, if you ask me why I exist for Him. And He tells us to store up treasures in heaven. It's all about loving your enemy, like Matt talked about. It's about evangelizing, like Megan said. It's about being holy, like Colton, Sam, and Summer talked about. It's about putting an end to sex trafficking, like Giselle said, or ending abortion, like Lizzie talked about. These are the things that have everlasting importance. We, as Christians, should chase after suffering because we are for Him. If you were to add up all the hours in a week that you spend worried about what you look like or what people call you, and you weighed these against the hours you spend worrying about others, which one would outweigh the other? And if you would say, I worry more about myself and the things that are meaningless, the smoke of this life, if I cling to that more than I care about the least of these, then I would say you've wasted half of your life. It'll be burned away when Jesus returns. I'm going to end with the words of Solomon at the very end of Ecclesiastes, when he says, that's the whole story. Here now is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey His commands, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, whether good or bad. So make sure the things you're doing are good and not bad.